welcome, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am a public relations and marketing professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight, I am so excited to have two of state representatives from the good Tar Heel state of North Carolina, and they happen to represent two districts in the Bull City of Durham. And right now, one of them is signing on now. There he is. There he is. Okay. So I have Representative Zack Hawkins from District 31.
Hey.
Hey, Zack, he was the youngest person elected to represent Durham in the North Carolina House District 31 back in November of 2018. Zack has been recognized as one of the 5 progressive freshmen to watch in 2019. He serves on a number of committees: full appropriations, education, redistricting, universities and energy, and public utilities, and was chosen to serve as House Democratic Caucus Transportation Chair, and so much more. Welcome, Representative Hawkins, to the show.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here.
I am thrilled for you to be here as well. Uh-oh. Now, see, Marcia was just on. She had signed on with her phone, and now she's disappeared on me. I don't know what happened.
Well, she'll hop back in.
You know what? I was telling her that I had Professor, oh gosh, now I can't think of his name, from, oh goodness, I can't believe I can't think of his name. Professor from NCCU, our great law professor, and I hadn't downloaded the appropriate things on my Mac, and I couldn't get them. We had to cancel the whole show. It was crazy.
Oh, man.
Here she is. All right. And next we have Representative Marcia Morey. She is the House Democratic Whip. She is a former Chief District Court Judge of the 14th Judicial District in North Carolina. Representative Morey was appointed to the North Carolina House of Representatives in April of 2017 by Governor Roy Cooper to fill a vacancy. And I can't resist telling this trivia about Representative Morey. She is also an Olympian. Co-captain of the U.S. Olympic swim team at the 1976 Montreal Games. From the age of 6 years old, she has been a competitive swimmer. She's won 7 national titles, competed in 2 world championship meets, and it takes an Olympian to deal with the drama in the North Carolina State Legislature. Representative Morey serves on appropriations, justice and public safety, education, K through 12, family, children, and aging policy, and the judiciary committees. Welcome, Representative Morey, to the show.
Pam, great to be with you. Great to be with my colleague brother, Zack, and thanks a lot.
Yes. I am so thrilled to have you both. I am truly happy to have both of you on. And there's so many directions we can go on to the show. But the first things first, I want to know how each of you felt when you learned last April that Representative Tricia Cotham of Mecklenburg County switched political parties and threw everything in such a disarray in the state legislature. Zack, I'll go with you first.
So it's probably a little more personal for me because when I was president of the Young Democrats, Tricia was appointed originally in 2007 to at the age of 27, 28. To fill Jim Black's seat. So she and I have known each other since we were 27, 28 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I've seen her fight. I saw her, stand up against abortion, be a champion for education. And yes, we lost contact after she left, but she wasn't gone that long from the General Assembly. You know, I mean, we stayed in somewhat contact,
Mhm.
and to sort of see the difference when she came back was just, you know, enormous. And things changed that I guess a lot of us were not aware of. And I'm pretty sure Marcia can, you know, attest to this. When that happened, the entire mood of the General Assembly changed.
Mhm.
The complete way that they went about business, and you know, systematically working to destroy, it was like a button, you know, like a flip switched in the
Mm.
General Assembly because they knew they had complete control and complete power. And it was disappointing. I mean, it was disappointing. A lot of folks have
Mhm.
felt that because again, I'm not the only one that has known her that long.
Mhm.
And you know, I just think that it brings about a lot of questions about, you know, what that, you know, when you say you're going to be somebody, you know, be
Right.
a Dem or Republican, and then you switch, like there's no rules, there's no safeguards for that, and so people feel betrayed.
Yes.
And more importantly about her making the decision, I mean, you know, she's, as they say, she's a grown woman.
Right.
You know, she's a whole representative. She can make her own decisions.
Right.
But, you know, the thing is that it casts doubt and mistrust on the system. And that's
Mhm.
regardless of who you are. And people at the end of the day need to be able to trust the government to be able to do the right things for them. Because they hear so many stories coming out of, you know, Raleigh and DC that are, you know, backstabbing, you know, backstory deals that just
Mhm.
aren't in the best interest of people. And yet this was another big one
Yeah.
that really hurt, I think, hurt the system. And so, again, disappointed. I mean, she and I still speak. I mean, you know, because again, she made her choice. There's nothing we can do about it. But we, you know, clearly the conversations aren't, and it's not as frequent as it once was.
Mhm.
And we're definitely disappointed. But we just hope that honestly we can win some seats on
Yeah.
my side because we need to make sure there's at least balanced government,
Right.
and find ways to stop people from doing that for sure.
Yes. Yes. Representative Morey, what say you about what was your thoughts when this happened?
I got a text from a reporter that you heard that Tricia Cotham switched parties, and it was like, you know, no. I mean, we were gobsmacked. I mean,
Yeah.
I one saw it coming. Zach is exactly right in his assessment. I didn't know her that well. I wasn't here when she was here previously. Met her at one meeting we had early in January. She didn't interact a whole lot. Seemed fun. And then to see this just sudden switch of parties, which I think the biggest betrayal was to the voters in her district.
Right.
That they went to the polls. She represented herself as something she turned on for
Mhm.
for educators, for abortion, for so many principles that she ran on, uh,
Right.
reverse course. So, um, like Zach said, everything shifted. The one thing I will say, she
Mhm.
accused the Democrats of demanding everyone be in lockstep with leadership.
Mhm.
Nothing further from the truth.
Mhm.
We are a good talk. We
Excuse me.
all have ideas, but we all share. And you will look at our voting records. We vote differently on many times. The tough times we stick together, but
Mhm.
the lockstep is with the Republicans. They never deviate. So
Right.
she left our party and went to a party of not one vote or amendment was ever deviated.
Right. Right. Well, keeping that in mind, since you're our resident lawyer, Representative Maury, can't something be done legally or legislatively to stop that type of thing happening again? Because that was just it. That is the ultimate betrayal of her constituents, and she didn't care. She just changed everything. So, isn't what could be done?
Pam, I don't think anything legally can be done. I think it's an ethical issue. And, you know, she's held accountable the next election that she runs in. Of course, I'm sure we'll talk about redistricting and they will redraw her district to make sure it's safe, whatever she's running for, if it's the House or Congress or whatever. But
Mhm.
there have been other elected officials in the past that have switched parties. But
Mhm.
you do it at a time there is a one vote hold on a supermajority and you flip it over. That is what became so monumental.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah. It was really it I think it just kind of took all of our breaths away. Those people like me who are paying attention to what's going on. And for me, I was so proud of North Carolina in the South holding the line. I looked at us as being the Southern state that was holding it together. We were holding it together, and then when that happened, it's like it was just such a tremendous
Yeah.
upset. It really was.
Yeah,
Really.
and the thing too, the last thing I'll add is when she came in, she was appointed what they call big chair. So one of the chairs of education, K-12, which is huge. That's where the most of the money is spent in the General Assembly, in public education. And so the ability for her to be this negotiator between the two on educational priorities, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, she was at the right point because she had clearly had sway on both sides, and to just sort of wipe that away. And again, I don't know all the again the details, but to
Mm-hmm.
not to stay in that space where you can clearly make better the public education system because
Mm-hmm.
of the one vote you have and the power that you have in that position was just, I mean, that was disappointing because she was a lifelong educator.
Yeah.
um, so anyway, but yeah, that's just one more thing that I think, given regardless of what her beefs were, I think that ability for her to hold that position and then guide the General
Mm-hmm.
Assembly, Democrat and Republican, towards great strides in public education was well within her grasp.
Yeah.
You know what? I thought that it was strategy. It was all strategic. I think that she was in the state legislature, got off, and when she came back, everyone assumed that they knew her from the past. She ran as a Democrat. They assumed they knew what they were getting, and she flipped. And I think it was. I really think it was strategy by the Republicans. I really do. I just don't. It was just too crazy for me. But at any rate, we've got some other stuff to talk about. So one of the big things that I hear about, that I talk to my friends about, and I talk to two local officials on the city side of government running for office in this municipal elections. We're talking about education, and education is one of those big rock issues. And it seems to me very clear that there want that the Republicans want to get rid of public education and really like take those funds and privatize education, which I know that it's not for everybody, because even within, in my experience, even working in the school system, I've had that experience. There is a difference that some charter schools really can pick and choose what students they want, and yet they're using public tax dollar funds to act like a public school. So I don't know. Both of you guys are on education committees. What are we doing about education? Because it seems like since Jim Hunt, when I came here in the 90s, education was really, really at the forefront of North Carolina. I really felt that. And he was a champion, and now it just seems like not so much.
Yeah. Um, yeah, North Carolina, native North Carolinian.
Hmm.
There were lots of folks who grew up on farms
Hmm.
and had an agrarian lifestyle, and because they could go to a locally public school, again, this was not a thing
Hmm.
for a long while outside of you being able to go to a private institution or being in an affluent area. Like, so everybody was not getting educated. But North
Hmm.
Carolina governors decided that this is what will move our state forward. And it paid off. It
Hmm.
paid off tremendously. And we not only have the best public higher education system in the country, we have 58 community colleges
Hmm.
and multiple schools within a public school system that has lots of diversity.
Hmm.
And so I think that to your point of privatization, they're like, well, some kids are not doing well, and we should let the private market decide. My
Hmm.
kid is not a commodity. Does that make sense? To be
Right.
sort of
Yes.
bought and sold and traded.
Hmm.
And so I think, and Marshall clearly can talk more about this, but the when you take $500 million out of the general fund to
Yes.
put towards private vouchers,
Yes.
public vouchers, opportunity scholarships, which is what they call them, but
Mm-hmm.
essentially vouchers for private school education.
Mm-hmm.
That's stealing from the state. That's stealing from somebody's future. And
Yes.
essentially, what it's doing is it's creating another industry. They're funding another industry
Mm-hmm.
because so what's going to happen? Current private schools are going to stay at levels or increase, and then they're going to say, you know what, the money's 500 million is there. Why not build another private school? And
Yeah.
so we're gonna have a plethora of those across the state,
And more
and then
have-nots in education, and that is just absolutely unacceptable.
that's right. And
It's
so for every 20 kids you leave, every 20 kids you lose, 2025 you lose a teacher. So
unacceptable.
you got to think about where they're going, and the whole goal is seriously to dismantle public education,
Yeah.
and they're doing it very very systematically, not increasing teacher pay the way they should, and
Mm-hmm.
not making sure that all the options are there. The public education system, and again, I represent RTP. The first thing they ask about is how's your public school, because
Mm-hmm.
they know that's where their workforce is coming from,
That's right.
and to not and to think that sometimes to think that you can feed one system and not feed the other and is ludicrous. And I think the you wouldn't hear as much crying from us if you would fully fund the public education system while you're also doing other things. But you
Mm-hmm.
can't say that one thing isn't working when you're not giving it all the resources that it needs.
Representative Morey, what do you say about this education situation? Because you haven't been a judge and everything else, and we'll get into the other big ticket thing. But what are your concerns with education? You're on that K through 12 committee.
Yeah, I am, and everything Zack said is, right. We have our Supreme Court before the new court started in January, and they ordered Leandro to be funded. That
Mm-hmm.
there's a constitutional right for every child in this state to have a sound basic education. The state of North Carolina, since 2011, has not funded public education. And the
Since
court,
2011?
yeah, well, since they took a supermajority, Leandro's decision came down before that, but
Mm-hmm.
they've ignored the order to fund it. And
Mm-hmm.
so now we got a new court in January, and they just said we can't order the General Assembly how to spend money, but the order is still there. I'm very worried. I think public education is the foundation of this country.
Mm-hmm.
It is basic. And as Zack said, taking $500 million that could be helping public education, we could have given teachers another 5% raise on top of what they got.
Which,
if we weren't doing these private vouchers. And it's private vouchers for anyone, regardless of what they make.
see, and that's not fair. That does not, because also too, those people that are going to really take advantage of that, they're more educated on how to fill out what form and can do it more quickly than the other person that's not even used to this. It's so many, the playing field is not fair. It's not level.
Yeah. And Pam, beyond the funding, the control they're trying to take over curricula, that it has posted what teachers can and can't do about, teaching kids through the fourth grade about, anything about hygiene, health, sexual identity, the teaching of Black history. I mean, that's in question. Will that offend somebody? So it's very scary to me.
Yeah. I don't know. It's sort of like we're going down this rabbit hole. And that's what I meant by, I was so proud of North Carolina holding the line until Tricia Cotham did her thing, because we really were, I mean, among all the other Southern states, North Carolina was a shining example of a Southern state. We weren't, but now, unfortunately, excuse me, to me, it seems like we find ourselves going down that rabbit hole of this Southern strategy. And it's scary. The only thing I know that probably we can do is vote ourselves out of this mess, that we really have to pay attention. I've got on my good trouble t-shirt. They encourage people to vote on every, they have to vote in every election, and how important it is to vote at these local levels of
Yeah.
elections and whatnot.
And one other thing I'd say, we're now boasting we're number one in business and attracting business.
Yes.
That's going to keep happening if we're 38th in, teacher spending or per pupil spending down to 48th or something.
Oh my God.
Bottom of the third of the nation. And we're not going to keep attracting businesses if we let our public crumble.
Yeah.
And I was when I was in the classroom, it was one of the last times before that's just right before they got rid of master's teachers pay. And so you have to ask yourself, why would you get rid of someone who's trying to improve their craft and trying to make sure they're a better teacher? And they knew that it would deter people from coming into the classroom. They would they'd use that master's degree for something else. Mm-hmm. And one of the other things, to Marcia's point, is that we already have 5,000 teacher vacancy across the state right now. 5,000.
And you guys only approved a 4% raise. That doesn't even cover inflation.
Right. It does not. That's right. And so you think about it, like if, again, when I go to graduations across the state, the smallest department is the education department. And so they have, and again, Marcia can tell you, the way they batter teachers, the way they try to control what's happening in the classroom, all these things are systematic to discourage people from coming into the public school system. And they know that if they can starve it financially and make it seem not trustworthy, mm-hmm. then they can do the other things and have an excuse for it. Mm-hmm. And we really cannot, because the number of kids that are in these classrooms, mm-hmm. those especially on low socioeconomic that depend on it, those with disabilities that depend on it, like we have to have a strong public school system. I mean, it literally is the only way, to Marcia's point. Companies will look at us and say, I'm not coming to North Carolina if we don't have, again, like I said, RTP, most of those companies that come out, I get a chance to do a tour, meet them eventually. Their first question is, how do I connect with the public school system? How strong is your public school system? Where can I get a diverse workforce? They're they care about those things and how they can invest. And and I'll never forget watching the CNBC interview with Governor Cooper, where they named us number one in the country to do business for the second time. Uh-huh. He said, how are we going to sustain this when it seems like the Republicans are going to try to, this guy said this on national TV. And so I hope it's not true. And so I'm hoping that we can move mm-hmm. this forward, but they're trying their best to dismantle the state. And that's just not fair to the people who work hard for it.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna move on to another big rock item is crime and gun control.
You got the right person on for that one.
I know. I don't know. All across our nation, the issue of gun control and violence is an epidemic. I mean, we all know that, and here in Durham, we've certainly had our issues. We certainly have had our issues. We got rocked recently with the UNC situation twice within just a matter of days. It wasn't even weeks. Was it? Maybe I don't know. Then the poor professor got murdered and kids were climbing out of the windows and we just are in a crisis, period. And so Representative Morey, you have been a district court judge. You have you've made some innovative programs in helping young people, first-time youth offenders, and whatnot. Do you have any ideas or legislatively that can be done to help with this gun control and crime?
Yeah. And it goes hand in hand. When we're living in a country where there are more guns than people, we have a serious problem. And we have introduced a dozen bills. Mm-hmm. And call it gun control. We call it gun safety.
Gun
Just
safety.
be
That's a good word. That's a good.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Be responsible. Just right after Parkland, the shooting at the high school in Parkland in 2018 on Valentine's Day, introduced what we call a red flag law. That if a family member or an officer knows someone is in danger of harming themselves by suicide or another with a gun, the judge can order that gun be removed from them temporarily. Others have done it, 30 some other states, Republican states, Democrat states. We have never been allowed a hearing. Safely in trucks or cars, safely store a weapon. Don't let it be in a glove box or on the seat. They hear that. So, you know, we're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep going. But the proliferation of guns, laxity that we're not doing any gun safety legislation, our crime rates are going up and they will continue to. You know, we get responses when we have mass shootings. You know, happened a year ago.
Yes, it did.
There was a blip trying to get something done and it kind of dies down. It will happen, but the Second Amendment, it is there. I honor it, but it's not absolute.
No, it's not. And it's so short. And they had muskets back then.
Right.
They didn't have AK-47s.
Well,
I mean, that's not even common sense. They had muskets. What? I mean, come on.
It said for a well-trained militia, you know, we can't forget the whole, you know, purpose. I mean, I'm fine with firearms and hunters and be safety, common sense. We don't need AR-47s, AR-15s, weapons or in people's houses.
Definitely not. Absolutely not. What say you, Zach?
Well, like I said, you have the expert. She leads the efforts in the House, in the General Assembly on these issues. And I'm someone, again, I hunt, grew up around and am comfortable with, with firearms. But it's about common sense gun legislation, period. Marcia, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the pieces of legislation was around the lock boxes, and then it got diluted to a gun safety campaign statewide. It's like, what is controversial about telling someone in your home or in your vehicle to lock it?
Lock it,
like,
right?
Lock it, just lock it. I mean, and again, growing up, everyone that even recently, I mean, folks that you find that are gun advocates, people who are really, serious about gun ownership, they do those things. And so we really need, honestly, the people who believe in the Second Amendment, who do all the right things, to just say, look, we see that there's a problem. We want to protect, the Second Amendment. We want to make sure that it's right. But there are certain people who should not have them, and there's certain precautions that we have to take, because this is not 1980 anymore, where you could, where you could leave it somewhere or leave it in a case or, leave it in the Chester drawer, and the kids, you dare the kid to touch it. And does that make sense? Those days are over.
Yeah.
Kids are curious. Things happen. People steal and break in homes more than they did then. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Most firearms, and again, Marcia, give me the exact. It's at least 50%, I believe, of stolen guns come from theft. Somebody breaking in a car, breaking in a home. And so if you were able to properly store and put it in a safe, guess what? That would run down. That's less illegal guns on the street. And, you have your issues, right there taken care of, plus good background checks.
Yeah, the background checks for crying out loud. So, Marcia, what are they saying? I mean, it's just falling on deaf ears, and they just want to talk about gambling and casinos. I take it. Then about gun safety.
Yeah, it's falling on ears. It will change. I mean, I am sure that. I mean, even if you have guns, if you have someone with dementia in your house, you can take it to the sheriff and say, please get rid of this unless you own it. And sheriffs cannot destroy guns. They have to put them back in the marketplace if they're operable. We
That's
have
ridiculous.
some crazy laws we need to really look at. There's so many things. Massachusetts has the lowest crime rate with guns because they have some of the most sensible gun safety laws. So
Mhm.
the public opinion, I mean, it's totally there. Over 60% of the North Carolinians want red flag laws, 70% want safe storage. So, I mean, it's there. I think the lobby of the NRA is very, very important to the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And we just need to keep talking about it.
We just got to keep fighting. So finally, a question. This is so unusual. Usually in the show, there is like 50 million questions already. So since I'm here, says what's being done to address poverty in the Black American communities? If you reduce poverty, you reduce crime. You know what? We do have something in Durham with that income situation, the Step Up Durham program, where people get, where they were giving people like $500 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And they had been incarcerated. They had come out, they were transitioning. And they had no recidivism with that either, that the people needed that cushion to help them with their jobs and to try to keep them stabilized or what have you, kept them out of trouble. So I don't know if that's what she's talking about or thinking about, but perhaps so. How would you answer her question? His or her question?
Oh, and I think it's spot on. Yeah, I mean, poverty is a predictor of people not being able to get ahead and hopelessness. Not to mention, with inflation, you can't get basic needs, and people become desperate sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
We need more opportunities. We need to do better expunctions of criminal records for nonviolent offenses, so people can apply for a job and have equal footing, not be held accountable for something that happened 20, 30 years ago that was nonviolent. There's things we can do. Poverty is also generational.
Mm-hmm.
We go back to slavery. The generational wealth is not the same.
Right.
And do owe it to do about it, to get more grants out, to get more opportunities out. Look at the U.S. report with their affirmative action. I mean, I think it's the wrong decision.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a big question, and it should not be forgotten. Have to work on.
Yeah. Zach, the question was, I'm going to put it back up because your system went out. What's being done to address poverty in the Black American communities? If you reduce poverty, you reduce crime. And what was interesting, I was mentioning to Marcia that, we have a Step Up program in Durham where people will get the $500. It kind of, they come out of, they're transitioning from being incarcerated or whatever. And they've not had any recidivism with giving people this extra money to help them as they get their jobs, to just get them on their feet. So, what do you like to say about that? That's in Durham, guys.
Yeah, and one of the things specifically is that those who are incarcerated now have access to the Pell eligible, so they can get Pell grants to move forward with higher education. And so one of the things that I've had a conversation with the Department of Corrections is about how are you making sure that they transition, right? Because there's a program in Tennessee that is a sort of not-for-profit that works with the state. And over a 10-year decade, everyone who's participated in that program, recidivism has been zero, because they do step-by-step transition processes to ensure that these people land on their feet, and that's doing it. One of the other things is it's the small things. It's making sure that kids get meals.
Yes.
We're paying for meals in schools, and that kids don't have to worry about those kinds of things.
Right.
It's making sure that we have good solid spending in our schools, so that kids can have. It's not just about walking into a classroom. It's about making the content come alive. And when that kid has the ability to escape, where they're from, it brings a whole new world and allows that kid to dream outside their boundaries. It's about we did put money over the last two sessions into affordable housing, and
That's
so now some of that we're going to have to, federal money will have to increase to make real dents, but the city locally has invested in that. The state has some money to be able to do that, and so hopefully the feds will increase. But affordable housing is enormous because people will spend 56% of their resources on housing, and then that's when everything else becomes really really short.
right.
Um, I think for us, one of the things that I have really pushed is food security, is figuring out ways that we can make sure that once people are even outside the classroom, right? Like once they get outside the classroom, what are some of the things that we can do to connect resources, because we waste so much food.
We
I did a food waste reduction bill, and the research that you get back from the amount of stuff that is wasted that could be going to help people
do.
get meals is ridiculous. And I will say that we are lucky to have such a really good community college and president currently,
Hmm.
because they are working on, I think, eventually 500 out of the 2,000 or so graduates. I think their goal is a quarter of every Durham public school graduate will have a community college credential by the time they
That's
graduate,
that
and
is
so
all
they'll get it for free. And so when you think about those kinds of things, the steps out of poverty give them a leg up so they can get into those jobs. And then one last thing is, we have to, and again, there's a lot of efforts, but they're disjointed, but hopefully we can get them together, is again bridging that gap between here and RTP. Like
hmm
again, Durham only has 32,000 kids. So
hmm
when you're talking about making sure that every child, especially once they get past a certain point, like middle school,
hmm
it should almost be pick your poison. Does that make sense? Because we have so many options for
Yeah.
children, but we have to do the work to make sure that they are educated and job ready. That's your way out. Because when you talk about being able to ensure that, again, if you can have some affordable housing and you have kids that know what their path is, them
hmm
being able to reach their goal and go make 60, 70, $80,000 a couple
hmm
years out of high school, even if they decide not to go to college, gives them an incredible leg up compared to where some of their families are from.
Right.
I would have never seen $80,000. My mom, she nowhere near made $80,000.
Right.
And
Right.
so the ability to make that kind of money just gives you a step up and the education to move your families forward. And so it's small. I think the thing that's most frustrating is it's the small investments that, especially in the General Assembly, they're not making, that can have huge impacts on people's lives.
Right.
And those are just a few, and there's probably a dozen more, but those are just some concrete things that we absolutely can invest in that will have immediate impacts on people's everyday lives.
hmm Absolutely. Representative Morey, what about we at long last we've gotten Medicaid expansion in North Carolina. Who believes it? Who believes it? Finally, would it take 10 years?
Mhm.
10 years. The only thing I'm happy and excited about it, I am, because it will definitely save some people's lives and definitely will improve their lives. The crazy thing is that what's happening now, we're hearing of hospitals closing up in rural areas in North Carolina, and then that's, I mean, did we get it too late? Is there any way to save some of those hospitals? What do you think?
Yeah, we did get it too late. We got it 10 years too late. And we did have people die because they didn't get the health care they needed and the preventive health care. So
Mhm,
600,000 people are now eligible that weren't eligible until we did this. It's a great thing.
mhm,
All the Republicans being 10 years too late on this. And I agree for the people who lost family members and have suffered. We've shut down a lot of rural hospitals because during this time.
mhm,
Could have been saved had we expanded Medicaid before this. And,
mhm,
and Zack will say more, but the thing I didn't like, it should have been a clean bill. I mean, we passed Medicaid expansion, but then they put the tickler in only when the budget passes. So we were faced with a budget that they put in all kinds of bad policy,
Yeah.
horrible policy.
Mm-hmm.
People were really torn. I want Medicaid expansion for all these hundreds of thousands of people.
Right.
Hate these bad policies. So it caused a real dilemma. It was gamesmanship, but
Mm-hmm.
thank God it's expanded. But now we're going to have to deal with some of the repercussions of other things that were in the budget that I think were just horrible.
What, like what? What was in there that was so horrible?
You got 2 more hours? I mean,
Well, you can start telling us some of them.
well, I think, our democracy, that they're taking away the governor's powers of appointment.
Oh God.
He's the executive
That.
to have appointment powers. The General Assembly leaders are taking away his powers. We're giving court appointments. We're taking it away from the governor to the General Assembly so they can control the courts. So it really is our democracy. And I think a huge issue is public records. Up until this budget was passed, you could send a public record request of any of my records, from my emails, from my calendar, and now in the budget it said, well, each legislator will decide if it's a public record or not.
No, that's not right, because does that trickle down to local government as well, since it's happening on the state level? How does that work?
Specifically, it was for the legislature.
Okay. Yeah, that's too grandstanding and self-serving for me.
Yeah, and Zack probably has a few more examples, but I'm really worried about our democracy. They're getting more and more power and control, and we haven't even seen redistricting yet. The map.
We were going to get into that. We'll still get into that. Zack, what do you have to say? What say you?
Yeah, I mean, and I think in the budget and bills sort of after that, it reminds me of, what is it? Washington Post says democracy dies in darkness.
Yes, it does.
I mean, they coined it for this time of the General Assembly in the last few weeks of what we've had to deal with. Not only did they add on the $500 million in private vouchers, for the wealthiest among us.
Yes.
They also allow for, in one of the bills that passed, for essentially the General Assembly to appoint the community college president.
See, and that with the Board of Governors as it is. I mean, that's what caused that whole Nicole Hannah fiasco. That just that was such an embarrassment.
Yep, I'm not done. They get a chance to appoint the chairs of the boards of elections in every single county.
Now, see, what does that? That's totally. I cannot. No.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think they do things like that because they know people are not digging that deep into the details. Right.
Well, let me ask you this: if we can vote them out, and then we have the legislature and the governor, can we reverse some of this stuff? Can we reverse it, Marcia?
Yes.
So yes.
But it is the vote. That's the only way we can change. We have to get people voting.
We got, and that means Durham, and I'm going to say this specifically to Durham, and that means for everybody. Listen, I think in the primary election, I think it was only a little over 11% of people who voted. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's what I saw. And
that's right. No, you're right.
Vote. You cannot, and then you're complaining about stuff after the fact, and you have the power. And you have to seize the power while you still have it. You got to get into good trouble, and you got to vote.
Right.
Well, Pam,
that's exactly right.
Tell people your General Assembly, your legislature, state government affects more of your life than anywhere else, more than Congress, more than your city. We talk about your clean drinking water, your public schools, your community colleges, how you vote. You can have affordable housing. We have to relate it to everyone's kitchen table. If you care about your children's future and your health, you need to be involved and be aware of what's happening in your House of Representatives and your state Senate.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing too that I'll add on to that is North Carolina is what they call a deal and rule state. Essentially, the state government is literally you have to go to the state government for everything. We have local bills that will change small charters that will allow you to change speed limits in your city. I mean, it's just that granular that people have to go. So the General Assembly is the seat of power. And what Marcia's sort of getting at with the appointment powers from the governor is that what they're doing is they are consolidating all the power in the heads of the Senate and the House, the Republican and the Senate pro tem leader. And so what that does is we don't know. I mean, again, this Leader Reeves had the speech on the floor. We don't know who's going to be in those seats later. We don't know if that person is going to completely abuse that power. And I think one of the things, that's important for people to realize is that those people can't be unelected, right? Because again, they're in safe Republican seats, so that means they will continue to stay there as long as they want, or whoever's in their seat will stay there as long as they want, and they only have to worry about keeping the people happy in the House and the Senate, meaning the people who have elected them there. And that means they run roughshod. They will do things that they know are not right because it's unchecked power. And the more that they can get unchecked power, the more dangerous it is for North Carolina because you are looking at a unilateral view of the state, and they don't care about the rest because they're never going to lose. Does that make sense? Because with that type of power comes, corporations that will give you money. People will line up to make sure that you're lining your pockets because they want favor, and it's really a tough situation to be in. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about democracy. I'm just saying, going to say that very clearly. What they did to voting rights just this last week is atrocious. Again, we're the state of North Carolina. We're ninth in the state, ninth in the country in U.S. population. I mean, people are looking at us, to, like you said earlier, to be an example. And all the strides that we have made, I mean, you forget 2011 to 2015. Hell, they've done that. They've taken everything down from 2017 to now, and so we just really have to vote like our lives depend on it, and make sure that we're not sleeping on election cycles, and that we are finding ways. Even if you think that Marcia and I and Natalie and Vanetta and the others are okay, your helps us create other spaces across the state that become more competitive because we need friends, not just, to get ourselves elected. We need friends across the state to see the world this way and to make sure that we can stop bad legislation just as much as we can keep making good legislation.
And Pam,
yes.
Someone said, what are the policies that'll affect their lives that you can point to?
Yes.
Well, the voting. I mean, if you're a worker, should you have the right to collective bargain? Should we have a better minimum wage?
Yes.
I mean, that's in the hands of voters to decide who they want to represent. I'm all for working rights. I'm for unions. I'm for collective bargaining. But, this is a right to work state. They will shut anything down about that. Your health care, your premiums, the cost of tickets in court, your clean air, your clean water, everything affects your lives by the policies we set in Raleigh, and we have to be responsive. If you believe in a woman's right to choose her own health care, reproductive rights, well, they took it away from women to make that decision. They took away the right of parents to choose about their child's medical care. It cuts deep. And so we need to stress that. We want to get what people values and be representative. Durham's okay. They cannot redistrict us or draw maps that's going to dramatically affect Durham because we're so heavily Democrat. But outside, and these new maps are coming, they will slice up old precincts. They will put half the blacks in one, half in the other with majority whites, and they're going to dilute the black vote, and they're going to get, we have to be aware of it. Those maps have already been drawn. We haven't seen them.
You haven't seen them yet?
Oh, heck no. They'll let them out next week, but they're already making sure they have people in those districts, or they can move to the districts. So when they're out, we'll be scrambling.
I'm so sick of them. And I'm telling you, it all started with Trisha.
Well, but sir, before that.
I know, but I'm just saying that when she made her move, then they got the super majority. And our governor, his veto is moot now.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's still good for him to do it because it shows that there are things that we don't agree with, right?
Right.
And it's important for him to state why because there needs to be from the business community, for the sane community, for those who want to see North Carolina move forward. It's important for people to understand that there is objection to it because they know that we're not all in there, walking lockstep with
Right.
those who want to take us backwards. I think one of the things that that again people need to think about. I think, gosh, Marcia, you're just saying something about all the things that affect people's lives. I was on a panel just yesterday about disability. I have two sons with autism, and so I was on the IDD summit. There are parents and families who, had been on what they call the innovation waivers list, waiting for money to get additional services and respite services. There are people struggling to make ends meet, who are well heeled and some who are not, to take care of the loved ones who have disabilities, both physical and developmental. And the lack of care and concern for those folks and the lack of options that they have, the lack of funding for special education in our public schools, when those with disabilities, including those like autism, are rising, and families are having to drive 1 and 2 hours to get basic services.
Yes.
Like things like the number of nurses that are and counselors that are in our schools that's directly affected by the General Assembly. So we're wondering how we're responding to this mental health crisis. Why in some areas there's not access to specialties in those counties. Almost in regions. Forget a hospital. Some of these people don't have like OBGYNs for days. And so when you start to think about the lack of decision making and it's not even decision, it's a lack of priority.
Right.
Like they are clearly prioritizing the wrong things because you know what? I don't care about those people. And so I think that's the stuff that when people look at something that they're displeased with, the question they have to ask themselves is who controls that? And 9 times out of 10, of course, city and county control a lot. Don't get me wrong. But there are so many things that at least the inspiration can come from the General Assembly to make sure everybody else does the right thing. And that's where they're failing us day after day.
Right. You know what? I saw this since I'm here, the ADOS community on my last, I forget which show it was. Was it the last show I did or was the Union UAW show? Somebody had it in the chat, and it says the ADOS community is or has been gentrified out of downtown areas of major cities in the Triangle and other cities across North Carolina. Will you look at doing tax freezes for fixed or low income ADOS? I will say that in Durham, we do have the LIHR program for taxes, for property taxes, trying to make sure that people are able to stay in their homes. And that information you can find at dconc.gov/DSS. So that information is there. Okay, she says it's American Descendants of Slavery. That's what ADOS stands for. What do you think about that, Marcia? What do you think about that idea of doing tax freezes for fixed or low income ADOS?
I'm in favor of it. But no community can do it unless the state legislature will give them permission to do any special type of tax provision. And taxes in the budget is one of the biggest tax cuts that it applies to much more benefit to the wealthy than it working person. And what that means is revenue will be stripped from schools, from public services, from driver's license, places. I mean, we're boasting tax cuts, but they're going primarily disproportionately to the wealthy than the working.
And the thing I'll add on to that is, so think about this. So once over the next decade, once those the private voucher opportunity scholarships gets to 500 million, then it will remain at 500 million per year.
With the tax,
right? No. Listen. It's two separate things. So the opportunity scholarships are the vouchers. Over the course of 10 years, it will ramp up to culminate at 500 million a year that's available for opportunity scholarships, right? To be applied for those vouchers to go for people who want to be in private schools. So that's one thing. And Marcia mentioned the tax cuts. Those tax cuts over the course of 8 years will leave us in a $7 billion hole. So all the things that she mentioned, if you are now taking 500 million a year out annually out of the general fund, and you're decreasing what goes in the general fund by that much, they're clearly going to continue to cut the goods and services and the things that help everyday people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's their.
We the people didn't get to know that. It's like we need to for this upcoming election, we need to fully understand all of these things to hear it, and as plainly spoken as you said it, so that we can make sure that people vote, because we have to vote righteously to take care of ourselves. That's just criminal.
Well, the thing that they're doing, and again, Marcia jumped in, is that they gave us not even 48 hours to read a 600-page budget.
Yeah, we had no input, no amendments, nothing. Take it or leave it. And we have the lowest tax rate. They're zeroed out. By 2020, they don't pay a penny in taxes.
Who doesn't pay a penny in taxes?
Any corporation.
And none of them. No. This is the thing, Pam. And I mentioned this, and I say this all. So again, I represent an RTP. None of them ask for it. Right. They are fine with paying their fair share, because what they know is that their money, them paying their fair share, helps with roads, helps with bridges, helps to fund education. All of it benefits them if they pay their fair share. They don't ask for it, but this is some pipe dream that the Republicans of North Carolina have, that they have to out-Republican, out-tax, tax cut everybody else around the country, and it's just going to be a failure. Ask Kansas. Kansas tried the same thing, and they bottomed out.
Yeah, they do it.
Is this my friend from Kansas? Is this who I think this is?
She's right on, or he's right on.
Francis? Is this Francis? Since I'm here, Francis is the only person I know on my political group that's from Kansas. Oh, God.
I spoke on the floor, and I quoted Kansas legislators warning North Carolina, do not do what we did.
Well, since I'm here saying, obviously, we didn't learn anything from them.
Nope.
Yeah, and you know what? Why did they? And then they talk about how how Democrats tax and spend, and then we get somebody in office and gets things under control, and then they ruin it all over again. It's ridiculous. I mean, what is whatever? Okay, no, I'm in Raleigh. Okay, well, nice to meet you. I don't know who you are, but that's cool. No, this is not the person I thought it was. But anyways, I tell you, I don't know, guys. You know what? Let me ask you this to wrap up things. What message do each of you have for those of us preparing to vote in the general election in November? For our municipal elections and stuff. So we get this November, we've got to, some of us are voting. And I'm a person that believes in you vote in every election, the primary, the everything. You vote. You just have to. Give us your words of wisdom about voting. Marcia?
Get to know the candidates. It's not easy to put your name on a ballot, but it's up to each voter to do their homework, get to know who they are, go meet them. We've narrowed it down in the primary, but it is your power. So use it well, get to know your candidates, and get out the vote. Raise this from 11% to at least 50%.
Yeah, absolutely. At St. Joseph's AME Church, anybody in Durham, we're going to do Souls to the Polls in the end of the month. I can't think if it's the 28th or the 29th, but you'll hear about it soon. But we're doing Souls to the Polls, and we make it fun, and we're serious about it. And you guys know that because you come there often. But Zach, what do you say about voting?
Yeah, I think that you have to make voting personal, meaning look at the things, as we both talked about, that matter in your life, right? Do you have someone who's been misfairly, hadn't been treated well in the criminal justice system? Is your school not, operating the way the way you think it should? Are you having issues with paying bills? Would you like to see better conditions environmentally, worker? All those things. When you look at them, you have to say that's my reason, because I can understand from I mean, all of us work hard every single day and we're tired when we get home. We don't have time to go and sometimes do the research, but we have to take, when we have these struggles and things that we don't see that are right, we have to take Marcia's advice and say, look, all right, I'm gonna find out. I see these people on the ballot. I'm gonna take 10 seconds or 10 minutes, and I'm gonna Google them, look at a little bit about who they are. I'm gonna ask around. I'm gonna talk to my PAC. I'm gonna talk to my party. Like, I mean, we just have to do the basics to make sure that we get our needs met. And so it's a contact sport, right? It's bi-directional. Like, Marcia and I are supposed to take what you say, right, and carry it forward and make the best decisions possible. But we can only sometimes do that if we're hearing from people and then we're getting that affirmation from people through the vote. And it's a powerful, powerful tool, and that's why they try to take it away. And I want people to remember that.
Right. Marcia, you have anything else to add?
I know we've been critical of a lot of things, but it also, I hope, energizes people to fight, to have hope. I think we're in dire times, and next year in 2024, when Zack and I are on the ballot and the president's on the ballot and all that, it's huge. And so we need to tell our neighbors, our friends, get involved, and be heard.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, one other thing, she says, before you go. What is being done about the homelessness and addressing the increasing number of mentally ill and physically disabled people we're seeing all over the city and encampments? Well, if they keep decreasing, doing those tax cuts the way they're doing, we won't have the monies to do those type of people helping types of things, because we won't have it. It won't be financed to do it. And we got to do something. I don't know. Any of you have an answer to that, to her question?
Well, I mean, I know city government is, that's something that's on their radar for sure. To make sure that, there are things being done about homelessness and those resources. I think the state has an obligation to create pockets of money that are available for cities and counties to address those issues. So I think that's our obligation. But I think cities and counties, especially Durham, and Chapel Hill and Charlotte, like, they have this on their radar because everybody's seeing the same issue.
Yeah.
And so I think it does sort of boil down to their ability to have more shelters, right? So that you can properly house the unhoused and make sure that they get the services that they need to potentially put them on the right track. And so that's definitely on the minds of our local elected officials, I know.
Okay. Very good. Oh, and Marcia's her screen went out. Marcia, you still there? I don't know what happened, but at any rate, guys, I have enjoyed you all so much. I really have, and I appreciate you coming on. Please do not be a stranger. You can come back anytime. Just let me know, because I am I think all of us can do something to educate the public, to do better, to encourage the vote, and to get out there and vote. And you all are welcome anytime. Bring some of your colleagues, whatever. We can do town halls. We can do, you name it, we can do it to educate the people about voting properly. Marcia, you still there? I see you on, but I don't see your face. So I'm going to thank you for participating. There she is.
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I got a call, but I've loved being with you. Thank you.
No problem. Well, thank you all so much. Please, please don't be a stranger. Come back. And in any shows you can participate in as well. You know, we're just trying, I'm just trying to do my part to educate people, period.
Pam, you're fabulous.
You're
Thank
incredible.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye, everyone. Wave them off, guys.